Society's made golf what it is, right? Because it started out as some guys found a stick and a stone and whacked it round the fields in Scotland. AI.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've not touched upon it.
By the time this goes out, there could be a robot at the Belfry.
My kids went to the 150th Open. Their highlight of their trip to the 150th Open was chatting to Niall Horan.
I feel like I've learned quite a lot about golf, and it sounds far more appealing now than it did on my way in. So again,
one more convert.
Yeah. It's Ryder Cup week as the US and Europe's best golfers descend onto Bethpage Black in New York. So on the Lead Out Loud podcast, we're taking to the fairways ourselves and hopefully dodging the bunkers to look at leadership, legacy and the business side of golf. Joining me, I'm delighted to say we have Ian Randell, Chief Executive of the Confederation of Professional Golf, and Professor John Rudd from Warwick Business School. So firstly, welcome to you both. Thank you for joining me today. Before we take a swing at driving growth in the game of golf, let's kick things off with our rapid resume. Some questions with some quick fire answers to get to know you both a little bit better. John, starting with yourself. First drink in the morning, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Coffee.
What was your first experience with golf?
I had an uncle and he bought me a chopped down club, just right for my size.
Well, I sadly have got a scar here where I got my lip cut in half when I was 5. That was my first experience, but I've stuck at it. And I was lucky. I grew up in a seaside town, so pitch and putt was my first experience of the game.
There you are, and that didn't put you off.
Didn't put me off.
Emails or phone calls?
Definitely phone calls.
Phone calls.
See, a lot of common here. A leadership lesson that you've learned from golf?
Know your weaknesses, play to your strengths.
Mine's simply that I think golf shows your true personality and is a great way of finding out someone's true personality. Very frustrating and at times exhilarating, and you see a full, what someone's character really is.
Favourite course?
Birkdale.
Old course at St Andrews for me.
Right. Is your desk tidy or organised chaos?
Tidy, Bron.
I'd like it to be tidy, generally organised chaos.
If you weren't doing this job, what would you be doing?
I would probably be doing marketing in the real world.
I would have to have found a job in sport. I was definitely a reader of the newspaper from back to front, and I stopped once I got beyond the sports pages. So a job in sport definitely was for me.
And as it's just around the corner, who is going to win the Ryder Cup?
Let me think about that. We're going to win, of course. There's only one answer to that, right?
What do you think?
You really want to you really want me to answer that question? Yeah, I think, I may be out of a job pretty quickly if I say anything other than Europe, but I truly believe that Europe is going to win for the first time on US soil since 2012.
We are just around the corner from the Ryder Cup, and so we thought it was only appropriate to have you two in to have a lovely chat about the game that is golf and how it does feel to be increasingly taking over popular culture. And I'd like to go right back to, in the last maybe 10, 15 years where some of the most exclusive clubs still weren't allowing women to have memberships in them, let alone what we're seeing today. So Ian, can you tell us a little bit about the shift that you have seen within the industry over the last sort of 10, 15 years and how you think we've ended up where we are today with golf?
You've got to remember that, for 260 years of its existence, that the R&A, one of the oldest golf club in the world, didn't have female members. So it's moved very, very quickly in a positive way. And I think a lot of things around society have also helped the push for more family and more female-friendly versions of the sport. I think we've seen off-course golf and the boundaries between sport and entertainment merging far more. So we're seeing far more of that. People used to be introduced to the sport through going to a golf club, getting a lesson off a golf pro, or getting a series of lessons off a golf pro. Now they've probably played adventure golf, they've probably been on a Top Golf, or they've been to somewhere like Pitch in London where they've got simulators, but fundamentally it's an entertainment centre. So I think there's been a deliberate push from all of golf's organisations to try and make it a lot more welcoming, and everybody's invited to play the sport. But I think society's kind of pushed it along as well.
And I suppose in that respect, the thing that's ringing a bell with me is ghetto golf. I think that's got a lot to answer for, right? Because that's essentially a bar, isn't it, in the majority? But no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's certainly quite recent developments that it's trying to.
Well, I think also, COVID, as horrible as it was, it actually grew participation in golf. People's lifestyles changed, and I think people realised that they could create a bit of space in their lives for sport and activity. And the kind of what we've seen in golf is from weekends being when most people would play, now they can find a bit of time in the week. Maybe they're not going to the office every day. So it's helped. And I think what you'll see is interesting to see how many go from a ghetto golf to actually become golfers. We've probably not measured that very well yet, but who cares? In a way,
exactly.
They're being exposed to something they enjoy.
Yeah, of course. And John, you're with us partly in your capacity as a golf fan, and also in your capacity as a marketing expert. Well, yeah, but how do those shifts and reflecting society, how does that play into how, the powers that be amongst the sport kind of influence those changes? How can you market something that stereotypically has been for such a specific audience?
Well, I think Ian made the point really well, that he talked about organisation. So I think that the sport has become more organised, more strategic and more commercial in their approach. So rather than sort of viewing them as sort of business entities in and of their own right, they see a bigger picture. Their demographics were changing. So in a way, yes, the externalities forced some of these businesses to change because, as Ian said, you can't, nowadays it's not good enough to say, well, women only entrance. Mm-hmm. By the way, this was only probably 25 years ago, and it'll be a course that will remain nameless. It's a private course just outside London, and they had a women's only entrance. And this is fairly recent, and that is just something that can't continue. No. So in a way, I think there are externalities to that, but just also the commerce of it. The numbers don't stack up, and I think with the advent of things like Live Golf or 54 Golf, would it be? They really lean into this notion of, well, what does the demographic look like? What does the younger consumer want from sport? And as you rightly say, they're a lot more digital. There's more. So Liv do a lot of work on apps and mobile, and so it's not just about, well, you've got to queue up, become a member, pay a really expensive membership, and then tee off, and there are all these boundaries and rules. It's about accessibility as well. So I think the sport's become more accessible. There are different channels to access golf. So in a way, if you like, the stereotype of golf is just a lot bigger now. I think it's a bigger idea now. And that has, as Ian said, it's not binary. It's not that people who play EA Sports, PGA golf aren't going to go on to play golf. They may very well, but that's not really the point. It's about engaging in the sport more widely and making it more accessible and acceptable, changing that stereotype.
I think the really interesting thing to me, John, is there's actually more female-only clubs than there are male-only clubs in Scotland, which
I didn't know
obviously the press don't really jump on. They like to get the soundbite of it being male dominated, and that's not necessarily the case. But you're exactly right in terms of how now everybody feels more welcome in the sport.
But I think that is such a key point. So in a way, I think that the individual entities, so for instance, a ladies only club, they become more commercially aware and also more aware of their role in a way of, if you like, railing against the brand perception, because the brand perception is elitist, or has been, I think, up until recent time, elitist, dominated, which isn't necessarily true when you look at the data. Yes, there's a distribution, but I think that the outliers of the distribution are now able to reach people, to say, hey, we're doing some really great stuff over here through social media. Look at us, we're doing some great stuff. And I think that's changing perception, because stereotypes, they exist and we hold them in our heads. They're a bit like brands. You don't just switch them on and off. In a way, you erode the stereotype over some time. And I think what people are doing now is that they can access that wider sort of social schema, if you like, through social media.
So would you agree then? There's a role, as you say, the role of stereotypes and how they may well erode over time, and you can lead to kind of manage that process. But also, could it be true in this case that the stereotype was kind of made the most of maybe previously, and by having that stereotype, you know exactly who the audience is, you know exactly what you're in this for, you know who's watching the big tournaments, and that's kind of the gateway.
Yeah, again, I think you've got to sort of separate out. There's the social view of something that they maybe don't know a lot about, but actually that's that's part of the distribution. So you then have commercial entities that realise that actually, just from a purpose lens, we don't want to run our club like this anymore. It's just bad. Optically, it's bad. Commercially, it's bad. We make worse decisions because we don't have cognitive diversity or any kind of diversity in the decision making. So it's not only commercially bad, it's ethically bad, it's morally bad. And then you've got this kind of wider sort of social schema. But I think those wider schema take longer to change.
Yeah.
Those in it, if you like, in the entity, they realise that, and it evolves quite quickly. And very often it's about leadership.
Yeah.
It's the leadership that can change it.
And I think one of the really interesting challenges and dilemmas there as well is to keep the core golfer happy, the traditional golfer, because there's still a great, the game hasn't changed that much in 500 years. It continues to be a great sport. I'll argue it's the greatest sport ever invented, right? But so you've got to keep those core golfers, your core demographic, if you like, the ones who are completely committed to the sport, happy, whilst accommodating the new audience as well.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you start to erode some of the things that make golf so beautiful.
Yeah.
We were talking, and this is sort of, we were talking separate to the podcast, and Ian spoke really well about the kind of what golf teaches the individual.
Well, tell us more about what does golf teach?
Well, I mean, golf's pretty unique in that it's self-regulating.
Right.
You're playing over a big expanse of land, and you may be the only person who knows if your ball's moved or it hasn't, or you've caused it to move or it hasn't. So, you're self-regulating from a very young age. I'm very, very proud of the values and the etiquette. Whilst we're modernising, I think we're really, really keen to protect what keeps the uniqueness of golf. There are standards. There are some standards in the way you conduct yourself, maybe the way you dress. I'm not saying that it has to be one particular dress code, but there's still standards there. And I have a 10-year-old now who, I've been the opposite of a pushy dad, but because I know how frustrating golf can be. But he loves it, and he's taken it up. And the great thing is I can put him in the clubhouse of my golf club, and he will engage. He will engage with people of all generations, all different ages. And because he's growing up in the environment, and I think it teaches you real life skills. Golf's a frustrating game, so you have to deal with adversity in it. But I think there's this real values. Other sports, if you cheat, you're kind of seen as being smart and clever. If you cheat in golf, that is the worst thing that you could possibly do, and it sticks with you for life. So I think it teaches you some real good life skills and values.
And it's interesting what you say about your 10-year-old there, because that sense of kind of community, belonging, being comfortable, feels to me anyway further and further away from life now, right? You've got to find these nooks where you can find.
I look after our junior section. I will not let a child in the clubhouse on their iPad. They've got to communicate, and they've got to communicate with each other, and they've got to communicate with, they've got plenty of time on their iPad elsewhere. It's a significant part of life, I understand that. But I think, there's times when we want to instill some other values into them.
Absolutely, and I think that's the other thing, isn't it? That, if you're looking at golf from a perspective where you haven't played, or, you're quite far away from it, like myself, it could come across as being quite isolating in that, like you say, you're holding yourself to account as you're making your way around the course. It is up to you to get your, I'm going to use totally the wrong language, is it a score? Is it your points? I don't know. But, it's very kind of about yourself. And so is there a risk of that you're kind of maybe losing the team and the connection with other sports?
I think we're seeing some great initiatives. We're heavily involved in the international rollout of an initiative called Golf Sixes League. And Golf Sixes League is exactly that. It's short form team golf. It can be played off course in a park. You can set up with plastic equipment, etc. It can be played on course, and then it can progress to any standard of golfer. This is fundamentally for the beginner up to a 36 handicap. And it's teams of 6. You're playing in pairs in a scramble format, so best ball all the time. Playing a shortened course, and you're playing 6 holes, so they can fit it into an hour and a half, 2 hours. But it's, even the kid who's not very good could hold that 3-foot putt and be a hero for their team in amongst it. And it's not necessarily it's not overly it is competitive, but it's not overly competitive. It's more about them being in that environment. And I think you're right, golf is fundamentally an individual sport, and we need to embrace that team element as well. What better as an example of that than the Ryder Cup, which I'm obviously so fortunate to be involved with. But people dream of being part of that team, and I think the Rory McIlroys of this world, who every week are playing on their own, they love coming together in that team environment once every couple of years.
Yeah, and makes it really special for viewers as well. So just before we move on to the Ryder Cup and what that's going to look like and what it takes, I just want to touch on the stereotypes bit one more time, because when you were talking about holding on to golf's values and the traditional bits that it stands for, and then you look to what you do and the people around you, for example, at the top end of the sport, as a profession, how much does that still look like it did 15, 20 years ago?
It is still male dominated. It is changing. But as you say, these things take leadership and it takes time. And also, I think, I'm not a fan of quotas. So you have to find the right people for the right positions. And that takes time for, I guess, women to want to be into those positions. People of from other races and cultures to want to feel comfortable in that environment takes time. Again, we've seen a big shift in that. And I think, some of the roles that are now in golf help facilitate that as well. We were talking about, the social media direction that I think the European Tour, the DP World Tour now, they were groundbreaking in a lot of the social media stuff that they did. So I'm seeing it change, and it's changing pretty quickly for golf. I mean, golf's a sport, like any sport, it's slow moving in change, but I'm seeing it change pretty quickly. And definitely there's a younger demographic in terms of the workforce. There's a much more, we're getting close, if you look at participation in the UK, male to female in golf, it's still only around 15 to 20%.
Right.
So that reflects then the positions that are held in the sport. But it is everybody's making a conscious effort to take it in the right direction. And as you talked about earlier, John, that cognitive diversity in decision making is and gender diversity and everything else makes us all make better decisions, and to try and make sure our boards and our leadership have that diversity it makes commercial sense as much as anything.
I think that's a central point, Ian. But also back to your initial point about the women's game and the profile of the women's game. What we've really seen has traction. We've seen this with the Lionesses. Is the cult of personality and the ability to project that.
Yes.
Yeah, so you go back 20 years. I mean, women's football was nascent at best and largely unsporting. Whereas now you have people, individuals, largely through social media, but not exclusively through social media, who really resonate with a specific demographic. And I'm talking about people in very organisational, sort of theoretical terms. So it could be that there's the opportunity for women's golf. That these are incredibly dedicated. I know very little about the professional game, but we have a mutual friend who is sort of on the cusp of that. And the amount of hours that go into that, they're just doing another thing. They're so dedicated to even compete at that level, never mind about consistently win tournaments like Rory. So they're very focused on the job to get that consistency. And I think it's either building a team around them that can project that personality and engage followers and people that like that will subsequently maybe get more involvement in the game.
Yeah.
So it's, in a way, we live in an age of a cult of personality.
Yes.
And so in a way, I think if golf's future is to think about these people as brand. Look at what Tiger did for golf. I mean, he was a phenomena, like a generational talent. Yes, he was great, but boy, did he resonate with certain target audiences. And then Nike picked that up and ran with it. And it was amazing for the game of golf. The fact that his name was on the poster, you would double attendance and double figures. So
Lewis Hamilton in Formula One, right?
Exactly. So I think that the challenge is really to be, I think they're on a journey. I think the commerciality is coming through, both in the service element within courses, both within the marketing and the brand space. I think that's the opportunity to engage new generations through the cult of personality.
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, we could pick up all the names that we've been dropping on the floor, because there's been big names that you've listed just today that you're, lucky to have, definitely to be those kind of pillar people to look for.
And not all Ians or Johns.
And not all Ians. In fact, I didn't hear about one Ian or John.
Wow.
and so there's a balance, isn't there? There must be. So how in leadership do you strike that balance then from where you sit?
Well, I think it's about maximizing commercial return with having a real kind of pure mission behind it and purpose behind it as well. Because I think that's what we see with the Ryder Cup. We want to make it just this wonderful experience. We want to celebrate the values of the sport that we touched upon earlier, but also we want to make it commercially successful, because if you look at the R&A, so the R&A run the Open Championship. They're the governing body for the golf's quite fragmented. There's a lot of organisations, but the R&A run the Open Championship. That's their big cash cow for doing a lot of other things. They're running the Women's Open this week in Royal Porthcawl, and that's growing commercially as well and in prestige as well. Senior Open last week. But fundamentally, they make the vast majority of their money, their profits, through the Open Championship. And they invested £23 million back into the game worldwide in 2023. So I think it's balancing the reasons why you're commercializing something with what the impact of that is really going to be. Is it going to be, we want to create fantastic experiences in terms of attending the event, in terms of television viewership and other forms of absorbing media now. And secondly, we want to invest back in the sport. I'm lucky, I run I've got a number of strings to my bow, and one of them is I run the Ryder Cup European Development Trust, which is a charity where we invest back some of the profits from Ryder Cup to develop the game across Europe. And if you look back in 1979, when the Ryder Cup became a European team, we kept getting beaten when we were GB&I. Maybe that wouldn't be the case any longer. We kept getting beaten, became a European team in 1979, but there were 10 Brits and 2 Spaniards. Now, when you look at the makeup of the Ryder Cup team, we've got a Norwegian, we've got Swedes, we've got Austrians, we've got Belgians. And I think that's, again, comes back to, as you said earlier, why we, what drives me in my role is that I think we've all played our own little part in sharing of good practice, sharing of knowledge, sharing of coaching standards, etc., to diversify the game internationally.
Yeah. And so from a marketing perspective then, John, with that purpose and money-making balancing act, how does that work in examples like golf, and what potential do all of those different kind of...
I think that's a great question. I was going to really talk about that a little bit, that increasingly more organisations are under scrutiny in terms of what they do and how they run and the purpose of that organisation. And I guess part of the old stereotype would be these organisations that, a bit stuffy, and they consume a lot of resources for a privileged sort of few. And I think what you just said was really interesting about giving back to the game and reinvesting in the game. But in a way, it's a question for Ian around sustainability, purpose, because if you take certain organisations, their purpose is, look, we want to return money to our shareholders, and we're kind of okay with that. We have some stakeholder pressure, and we'll kind of do a bit of that sort of green stuff if we have to, but it's kind of a bit of a fad. Whereas you've got other organisations that are really purposeful, and they invest heavily in social good kind of initiatives and green initiatives and stuff like that. And I guess my question was, in the face of that, and knowing that a lot more private equity is sort of thinking about investing in good, quote unquote, sustainable businesses, is that a challenge for golf brand across the world? Because again, I've never been involved in running golf clubs, so I don't know. Yeah. But and of course, it's not me saying this is mutually exclusive. You can invest in green and become more efficient and effective. Yeah. So it's not a binary decision. But in a way, my question was going to be around that. So how is that changing how these organisations are run and where they invest and what they look to do? I don't know, because water's a big deal in the States right now, as we know.
Yeah. I think it's going back to that purpose. I think we've always done that as our organisation's not for profit. We do have a commercial arm, but it's not for profit, and we do a lot of these things without really thinking about them. So a lot of our purpose is to go back to developing the game, is to instill good practice, as we talked about earlier. But I think then we became more aware of it, and we became more of CSR and other initiatives. And then we started to think about how we actually do that more with a bit more proactivity rather than just the fact we do it on a daily basis. So there's organisations like Golf Environment Organisation. Golf's been really at the forefront of that form of environmental sustainability for a long time, really looking at pesticide usage, looking at biodiversity, looking at water usage, and really trying to do something about it. In Ryder Cup, we've had the Green Drive for years, trying to make the event as close to carbon neutral as you possibly can. You go to the Open Championship, there's no plastic bottles on the golf course. There's refillable water bottles everywhere. So I think we're all very conscious of it. Again, when you look at it, there's a lot of organisations making a business case for it now as well in golf clubs, rather than it just being viewed as doing the right thing. There's also a business case behind it as well. And when you look at sustainability, there's so many different forms of sustainability. There's obviously environmental sustainability, but there's also financial sustainability, and there's and participation sustainability as well. So I think we're doing all those things, and now we're doing it with a little bit more thought behind it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because all of the positives and the examples and anecdotes that you've come out with today, it's almost, you could say that it's due to that fragmentation, because all of these little different parts are having their own ideas and running with these schemes that you might not necessarily get if you were also working under, I don't know, one person's ideas sat at the top. And keeping that creativity and the approaches to these different things, you know, it's quite an interesting way to lay it all out.
The former chief executive of the PGA of America, who I got to know quite well, he was chief executive of Deutsche Bank USA before, so he came from a very different world, but he was a passionate golfer. And he said, effectively, the leaders of the sport, we are the board for golf. We're the board of directors for golf. So how do we actually make sure we make the right decisions for golf?
And from your perspective, John, if you're looking at golf as a big picture, it's known as big business, but maybe that's in the more stereotypical bit we touched on with all the Trump stuff, and having the walk with the business people and that. But now it seems to be shifting more of a corner, and we've mentioned the accessibility, we've mentioned the social value, the health value that we've touched on too, as well as more doors being open. Is that, from a marketing perspective, a dream or a nightmare situation? Is there so much going on that how can you possibly come at that with any tactical approach?
I think that the problem is, as Ian articulated really well, is that it's not one organisation. If this was a parent organisation with multiple SBUs, then it's a lot easier to kind of align those and say, well, they kind of do this over here and they do this over here, and that might be where it heads as these entities get more and more commercially viable. I mean, if you look at what's happening in boxing right now, then you are getting this kind of coming together. That's way down the line. As Ian said, maybe it's about getting either a direction of travel or a code of conduct or some ethical, that we can get all of these different arms buying into. Otherwise, you are going to get this fragmented notion of golf. But it might not necessarily be a bad thing. It might be that for a particular constituency, that works really well. But I do think golf's changing. If we go back 30 years, if we walked out onto campus and asked people, hey, tell me about golf, they'd probably talk about, the old school. It's changing. And I think, what we do know from young consumers is that they're very experience led. A lot of them have quite short attention spans, and they're into sort of instant gratification. And so the notion of spending years of your life
doing anything at all,
trying to perfect, you think you've got the putting and then it goes away from you.
Right.
It's a difficult sell.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But as Ian said rightly, it is a wonderful sport that is full of all sorts of different nuances, social benefits, social good, personal characteristic development, stuff like that. And I think in a way structurally the powers that be have some kind of responsibility just to keep that passion. Because oftentimes it's about that passion and that entrepreneurial idea of saying, well, we do this and we're stuck in that, but let's develop it. Let's try that. Let's just try and see if it works.
Yeah.
And that will change, because if golf doesn't change, then it will pivot.
Yeah.
And people will look for experience elsewhere, and then you're kind of stuck in a certain demographic. But I'm lucky. I love the game. I think it's a wonderful sport for a range of demographics. But I do think it's that accessibility, and there's all sorts of marketing challenges. But a lot of it can be remedied through social media and actually just telling the stories of what already happens. You've said that on a number of things. We do this. These are wonderful. Spread that message. Yeah. Tell that story.
But I think it's happening. I do think it's happening, John. And the fact that Bron, from her own personal, as a non-golfer, personal experiences, I see it with my own kids. My 18-year-old said to me the other day that 10 years ago, if I'd have said I'm a golfer, my friends are going, you're a golfer, what are you doing? Yeah. Now cool. All her friends are playing, and they're enthusiastic about it. So I think it's happening. Yeah. And as you said, I think some of the fragmentation of our sport is a positive. Yeah. You see a lot of other sports where they only have one governing body and they're a mess. Yeah. So some of it can be viewed as a real positive. But we do have to work together as best we can.
I think the players have got a lot to do with it. So I was trying to think. Sort of back in the day, there was Payne Stewart, and he for people that don't know that, he was a guy that dressed very garishly in bright colours, and he wore +4s, and he was considered a complete outlier. But he was changing. Whereas now, a lot of the professional golfers, they're very relaxed. They're kind of
Have you seen Happy Gilmore too?
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen the trailer.
A number of cameos is amazing.
Things that look like jeans and round neck t-shirt. They wouldn't have got on the course. Yeah. They wouldn't have been let on the course 20 years ago. So I think the game is changing, and I think there is recognition for that. And of course, that makes it more accessible and identifiable. Yeah. People see that and say, well, they don't anymore look at professional golf and say, well, that doesn't look like me at all, so that's not for me. Yeah. There's a real connection now, I think. And I think that's
spectrum,
healthy.
Isn't there?
Yeah, because that kind of cult of celebrity, that cult of personality plays out through social media. And I think that's changing perceptions of golf. Yeah,
no, hugely. And I mean, as someone who has been accused on occasion of having that attention span issue that we mentioned earlier, I can really see the appeal in a driving range. On a personal, I can totally understand that. And then, when the sun's out, you can see how people lose hours of their lives wandering around, because that's what it seems like on the outside looking in. But I mean, why wouldn't you? Yeah. So whilst we've been chatting about stereotypes, we've looked back sort of 5, 10, 15 years, and we've heard a lot about all of the different projects and missions that are happening right now. So what is the hope then, Ian, for that in the future, if we look forward 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, well, I go back to golf mirror in society. And I think we will just keep moving in that direction. So, as I said before, I think it's really, the core golfer is going to change, because we're talking about the core golfer now. In 10 years' time, what's that core golfer going to look like? And how the new golfers are brought in a way where they become the core golfers in the future. I see more and more off-course forms of the sport. Simulator golf and everything that's linked to that have become more and more exciting. They become more and more realistic. There'll be more and more of that. And I think at the top level, in terms of tour golf, I think that's the really interesting thing at the moment. We've obviously got disruption. We've got Live Golf. We've got the DP World Tour. We've got the PGA Tour. We've got a new vehicle with PGA Tour Enterprises as well, and we talked about private equity funding that's come into the sport in a number of ways. So I think the really interesting thing is going to be how's that play out, because we want to see the best golfers in the world play together slightly more often, both in the male side and the female side of the sport. So I think we're going to see that. At what stage we'll see that over the next 5 to 10 years, I think, and what form that takes is going to be interesting.
And what about yourself, John, as a player, as a fan, as a supporter, as an enthusiast? What do you hope it holds in the future?
Well, we've touched a lot on accessibility and inclusivity, and my hope is that we see a lot more of that. We see that develop. I think from a spectator's eye view, or somebody who would engage with the sport, sort of a non-player, if you like, I'd agree with everything that Ian said. I think we'll see a lot more technology in the game, and a lot more opportunities to sort of interact with golf through technology. But I actually think on course, I think when people go, in a way, going to watch people play golf is an opportunity to, for me particularly, would be to disengage. So I would go into flight mode and I wouldn't want to look at the phone. But I think what we do know from younger consumers and the more experiential consumers is that they want to be involved, and oftentimes that happens through technology. So I think you'll probably see a lot more app-based stuff that people will be on course, and they'll be interacting with the game through an app. I think there'll probably be a lot more screens, unfortunately, around the courses, where people will have opportunities to interact more widely with the course in the whole, as opposed to what they're seeing in the moment. So it'll be more of an experiential lens for consumers, because I think that will not only open up commercial opportunity, but it'll also attract more people to the game. Unfortunately for me, I as a personal consumer, I hate that idea. I really like the idea of a technology-free zone, where I go and I just kind of have a stroll and I watch people hit the ball down and I go and follow that. That for me is heaven. But I'm 1,000 years old now, and I'm not representative of younger consumers, and they are far more experiential, they're far more digital, and we know they live their lives through mobile. So I think we're going to see a lot more interaction with the game in the moment through mobile technology is likely, but also sort of in the infrastructure around the course. I think that's probably likely.
John, a question for me, if I'm okay?
Yeah, please.
AI. Obviously, we've not touched upon it, but I see it now, and we're obviously paying attention to it because we've got thousands of golf coaches in amongst our various memberships. The impact of AI on coaching is going to be massive. Maybe I'm asking a very difficult question here, but how do you see AI affecting our sport?
I think it's a great question. It's a timely question. I think it depends. So for us in HE at the moment, that's one of our central questions. And it's not just in HE. I do a lot of consultancy work. A lot of businesses are struggling with, where is AI going to land? What does it mean? And what you see at the moment is that some businesses have got it nailed down. There's a very clear strategy. This is how we're going to do it. The majority of businesses don't know.
No.
So they have like an envisaged state where we're all going to be slaves to AI. We're all going to be hanging out, sort of drinking margaritas while AI does all the work for us. I don't think that's the case. I think at the moment we're at a stage where, for the majority of jobs at the moment, they're kind of a co-pilot. So they assist us and they provide us prompts, and then we kind of go off and do stuff. But in terms of what that will mean for golf, I think it will be the technology interface. So in a way, AI at the moment, or large language models, as a lot of it is really, it'll go and fetch information and then serve it up. And it's that the way in which you serve that data will be key. It's not the fact that it exists or AI can go and do that for you. That's very clever. But it's how you interface with that data as a consumer. So again, we kind of back to that interface. Is it a mobile technology? Is it something that I put in my head? And what aspect of the game are we talking about? Are we talking about the in-course experience? Are we talking about AI teaching me how to play golf? he could do all of these things, but he can only do that if the interface works and I can engage with the interface and it can, if you like, help me. If I'm just sitting on a laptop, I'm not sure how useful that's going to be.
Because I heard that the first example of it this week, where a pro has been contacted by one of their clients and said, in a friendly way, I don't need you anymore. I can, I've got everything I need through putting my swing into AI, and it gives me all the lesson I need. But now, I don't believe that's an effective way of learning. No. But yeah.
But I think, that speaks to a style of learning and possibly a personality. Yeah. My guess is that particular individual was probably giving that coach a hard time. It sounds like they already have all the answers anyway. Yeah. They've just in a way, they weren't getting the right answers through coaching, so they've asked the AI, and AI is now giving them the right answers.
Well, the ones they wanted.
So they're going to go fix it. I mean, wouldn't it be nice to run an experiment and look at whether their handicap changes over the next 6 months? My guess is no. So we're not there yet. In terms of how it's going to affect golf, I think it depends upon what bit of golf you drop on. If we take the average club, can AI enhance the operational efficiency and effectiveness of that club? Yeah. And maybe, as we were saying earlier, that frees up time, that frees up space to do that outreach, that promotional stuff, and say, hey, come and engage. Yeah. Maybe that will help us do that. Coaching, I think we're a way off that yet, but by the time this goes out,
it's moving that quickly.
There could be a robot at the belfry just down the road teaching us all how to play. And I'll be the first in line, by the way.
And that goes back to my point. Hopefully the way that the coaches evolve is that it's the human factors, the big element, and being more than just a swing doctor or a swing technician is
absolutely.
the important.
So, given your involvement with the Ryder Cup and how timely it is at the moment, tell us a little bit about your experience with the competition and some of your favourite stories from it.
Well, I guess I was very lucky. I've been involved in quite a few Ryder Cups. I've been involved in the Solheim Cup previously, which is, again, equally as amazing. The Ryder Cup's so big. The Solheim Cup is still a kind of family event, but it's growing massively for the ladies' game as well. But I was lucky that I joined the board in about 2011. So my first Ryder Cup as a Ryder Cup board member was Medina in 2012. And I don't know if you can remember, but we were getting beaten going into the Saturday four balls, and Ian Poulter and mainly Poulter, but a couple of others really drove some momentum towards Europe. And we were sat there as a board. So we finished the day, I think 10-6 down, and going into the singles on the Sunday morning. And we were sat there as a board just going, well, I hope it's not over by lunchtime. That's going to be horrendous for television ratings, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden you felt this momentum shift, and you go back to leadership and apply it there, and how you saw the whole team dynamic change, and the going from almost despair to complete hope. Even though they were behind, they felt like there was a real chance of victory. And that the next 24 hours there would take some beating, I think, because we quickly got blue on the board. Alathabel was the captain, and he embraced the spirit of Sevi. So Sevi was kind of, in many ways, a real driver for European golf. And again, it wasn't just about the way, how good he was as a player. It was his whole, it was charisma. I mean, true charisma with Sevi. And he passed away, and they had on their sleeves they had a Sevi kind of celebration logo on their sleeves, and they embraced that really. And 24 hours later, Martin Keimer was holding the winning putt on the Sunday, and I think to see that shift in a team and the belief in a team was quite incredible, driven by a couple of things that changed momentum. Some of the stories and the parties after I can't quite divulge, but the going back to the airport was very entertaining. Some of our team had not been to bed, and certainly enjoyed the success. But what I've seen again over these last few is every Ryder Cup's such a fantastic experience. 2014 we went to Glen Eagles. What an amazing occasion that was. And now as we move towards, Rome was incredible last time round. As we go into this one, we're just praying for a close match and an away victory, because there's been too many home victories over the last few. But I think, let's get a close match and a European victory in a week's time.
No, perfect. And from your perspective, John, as a fan, where do you sit with the big competitions, and how does that work?
It's funny that you mentioned that Medina and Poulter. That probably is my abiding memory of Ryder Cup. The emotion, and for me that was a really pivotal moment. Not just for that tournament, but for golf. It mattered so much to him.
You saw that passion.
You saw the passion, and I think that's something that sort of transcends sport. It was that sort of team, and I can see his face now, years later. The other one's Darren Clarke in Ireland, but that was for a very different reason, with the passing of his wife and how he played. But for me, Medina and the passion of Poulter, that for me changed the direction of the game, and also I think transcended that as a golf thing. It was an amazing thing to watch. And it really came through. It was inspirational just to sit there and watch it as a fan.
I was going to say how interesting it is how much that came through then, the way you just described the energy. And we're talking about 2012, right? So that was not how, maybe it wasn't all over the socials as it would be now. And for that to be the same one and feel that from...
Well, it was huge. I think it was 5 putts in a row that were just going in one after another, another hole. Rory was playing with him, and Rory was playing a passenger role for a change, which is amazing to say that. But just to see that passion, how much it meant, and then the shift in dynamic across the whole team, how the performance of one player could effectively change the whole environment.
So we like to see the bottom line at this stage, which is if there was anything sort of key that came up in today's conversation that you would hope anybody on the receiving end of it would be the bit that they walk away with.
I think my takeaway would be hopefully that find that thing, when you're looking at your own careers, find that thing that gets you out of bed in the morning. What makes you, get passionate, get excited. I've been lucky that I've been able to pursue my passion. I still, get out of bed in the morning because, as I said before, I love the sport and I want to keep advancing the sport. And when people talk about it's not what you know, it's who you know, there's a little bit of that, but fundamentally it's a bit of both. But you definitely, if you can give somebody, once you've got there, as John and I talked about before, once you are, once you're in the industry, and my industry is quite a small industry in terms of golf, just give everybody the opportunity, because probably on their way up, they can do more for you than you can do for them in the long run.
Well, there's a lot to say, isn't there, about if you're following your passions, putting yourself in the right room in the first place, then that's how you're going to start building those connections, and people are going to give you the time of day if your passion comes through. Most
industries are people industries, really. And so just treat everybody with the respect that you'd want to be treated yourself. As I said before, I think I've been fortunate. I've had some good mentors along the way, and they mean a lot to you.
And John, what would your bottom line be today?
Bottom line, I've probably got 3 if I can.
Okay.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
The first one is try golf. It's probably not what you think. And it's great.
Try golf.
That'll be the first one. The second one would be, and it's kind of not just about golf, although we've talked a lot about golf today. Leaders, managers, but also particularly marketers. We all like stereotypes. They allow you to make cognitive shortcuts, and they're very easy, and humans like to reduce complexity by doing that. Oftentimes just poke the data or poke the stereotype and say, well, actually things evolve and things change, and also the data that you've used to collect the stereotype. So just make sure you're collecting the right data and challenge stereotypes, because they oftentimes move. No stereotype is forever, they evolve. So definitely do it. And the third one, and I'll embarrass you in a little bit, is Warwick Business School call themselves change makers. And the more I get involved with our alumni, the more impressed I get. And what a great role model as a change maker. So increasingly more, I'm enamoured with Warwick Business School and its alumni.
So that's it for today, and I'd like to thank you both so much for your time and being patient with me. I feel like I've learned quite a lot about golf, and it sounds far more appealing now than it did on my way in. So again,
one more convert.
Yeah. So a final thank you then to Ian Randell and Professor John Rudd. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the conversation, why not subscribe over here to get all the best content from Warwick Business School? And don't forget to catch up on every episode of Lead Out Loud over here.